Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to preview Saturday's basketball games across the SEC. My internet connection's been horrible, so apologies in advance if there's a glitch, but let's get right into the games. Ole Miss visits Vanderbilt. That'll be noon Central on the SEC Network. We don't have lines in front of us as we do this Thursday morning, but what we do have is an average of what the computers say. The ones we use are Ken Pomeroy, Bart Torvik, BPI, and Jeff Sagarin. And we factor in home field advantage. Vanderbilt is about a 3.5-point favorite with a 68-point chance to win this one. God help you on this one. I think that Vanderbilt, with its mind right, at full strength, is a better team than Ole Miss. It is playing at home. But A, I'm not sure what home court advantage in Nashville is worth anymore. And B, the last time we saw Vanderbilt, the Commodores got beat by 57 at Alabama. That was about Alabama. That was also about Vanderbilt no showing. Jerry Stackhouse's job may be in jeopardy. I don't know what mind frame Vanderbilt goes into for this one.
Yeah, that makes this hard to predict because it's not many times in a season you're talking about a 57-point loss. So it's kind of hard to know. You know, it's like it's one thing to talk about Alabama's response from the loss at Oklahoma. It's another thing to talk about Vanderbilt's 57-point loss in a 10-12 record and how you respond from that. So I have no idea either. This is the biggest question of the. I mean, I don't know how you could. Again, if we did the confidence pool, had to rank these 1 through 7.
Might be one.
This would be at the bottom.
Or 7, excuse me.
Yeah, whatever the bottom one is, because I have no idea what happens here. I'll go with our usual trend of taking the home team, but because again, we don't know if Matthew Burrell is going to play for Ole Miss, so that's kind of not ideal either. And we've said Ole Miss has not been bad at home, but it's still a team that's kind of struggled a bit elsewhere. So yeah, I'm going to take Vanderbilt, but look, if this team loses this game, then I don't know how you could pick them the rest of the season, honestly, outside of maybe the South Carolina game, because I just think mindset is everything, and it's not easy to respond from a 57-point loss. And we'll see if they can do that, because the problem is, too, Vanderbilt, you don't know who's going to play. So there's another question, that how can you properly figure out what to expect from them? But I guess I'll pick them anyways. So,
well, and to that, here's the situation. Liam Robbins got back for the Alabama game. He'd missed 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't know, 5-10 minutes in the game, he and Jordan Wright running at each other, butt heads. They're both bleeding from their foreheads. Wright didn't come back. Robbins did. Didn't matter. Tyron Lawrence, who's been their best player when Robbins was out, missed the game, sat on the bench the whole time, didn't come in. Coach's decision. So there's something askew with he and Jerry Stackhouse. Kermit Davis fighting for his job. Matt Murray. I mean, just mystery all over the place. You get the point by now. Okay, Auburn goes to Tennessee. The computers have the Vols as about an 11-point home favorite with an 86% chance to win. Auburn looked much better last time out, but the Vols will be. I'm not saying Rick Barnes needed to get their attention, because this team has been locked in and playing hard all year, but you do wonder what frame of mind Tennessee has coming off a loss in Gainesville.
Yeah, I would expect not an Alabama-esque response here, because the opponent's tougher, and I just don't think Tennessee obviously has the offensive firepower to do what Alabama did to Vanderbilt. But I would expect something similar here. Again, I don't know that I mean that in the way of Tennessee wins this by 25 or anything, but I just think you'd be really disappointed if you're Rick Barnes and a Tennessee fan to see this team do anything other than kind of get back to doing what they do. And let's face it, that is the defensive end of the floor, because offensively, I think you tried to be nice about it and say, I don't know, maybe they're turning a corner and they're not going to have any of these stretches, but it's pretty clear these bad offensive stretches still exist. And Auburn's the kind of team defensively that could bring those out of them too. So, if you're talking about a potential slump for Tennessee, I don't love the matchup with Auburn just because of how they defend. But at the same time, Tennessee's the home team here, And I think in this one, their defense can certainly dictate a lot of what Auburn is going to do offensively. And even though we've talked about different guys stepping up, Alan Flanagan and guys like that offensively, I just think Tennessee is as we know, it's a tough team to score against. Even if Tennessee has bad stretches on offense, this is a tough team to score against. I think Tennessee gets some easy opportunities here, maybe forcing some turnovers, because that's something too, right? If you want to talk about when Auburn's at their best, they're not turning the ball over. At 5 turnovers against Georgia. But you look at teams look at the West Virginia game. They turned over, I think, 13 times. The A&M game, I don't remember what that was. 14 times against A&M. So I think on the road here, Auburn kind of has to be flawless in terms of how they take care of the ball. And I just think that number is going to be closer to the 13 or 14 in the past 2 games than it is the 5 that they had against Georgia. And I think that'll allow Tennessee to get some easy looks to make things a little easier offensively, which they need right now coming off that last game. So, yeah, I'll take the Vols here. I feel like matchup wise, they can do some things to frustrate this Auburn team from an offensive standpoint. And my guess is, again, not only forcing turnovers, but really forcing the guards to beat them from outside would be, kind of the game plan I think most teams will have against Auburn at this point. But yeah, I mean, again, your confidence in Tennessee has been rattled now, just based on a couple performances, and they're still 18-4, but a couple of these offensive performances have really made you question some things. And against a good defensive team like Auburn, this is not to say that Bruce Pearl is not going to have the ultimate game plan here, and come in and really frustrate Tennessee offensively. I could certainly see that happening, but I just think, from what we've seen from both teams this season, I'd find it hard to pick against Tennessee in a bounce back spot.
Yeah, the computers have not lost confidence in the Vols for sure, but the computers don't watch basketball games either. And you did see some things from Tennessee that were problematic, but Tennessee's been resilient, and I'm with you. I think they will win this one in Knoxville. That one at 1:00 Central on ESPN. The next one up in order of tip-off, Arkansas goes to South Carolina. The computers have Arkansas as about a 15-point road favorite with a, 92% chance to win. Arkansas's look better. South Carolina either pulls an upset or loses to a decent team by 40 points, and I lean more towards the loss than the upset in this one.
Yeah, if they do, they don't do it at home and I know they beat Clemson at home, but I'm sorry, I'm disqualifying anything that happened 3 months ago, from a basketball standpoint. Yeah, I mean, South Carolina's not played well at home. Well, let's just call it what it is. Not saying they played well on the road, but they've not played great at home. And so I would almost look at this one as, if we had to pick locks of the week, upsets of the week, that kind of thing, this would be my lock from a standpoint of, you're picking against the worst team in the SEC. And it's just unless Arkansas just forgets how to defend and South Carolina has a 3-point shooting game, the likes of which they had against Kentucky, that's the only path I could see happening here. Otherwise, there's no reason this should be less than a 15-point game in Arkansas's favor. And I keep talking about it. I think they're getting to 5-5, and this is the final one. And you couldn't ask for, I don't want to say an easier setup, but it's statistically the worst team in the SEC, for Arkansas to get back to 500 in the league against. And yeah, so in that instance, as we say, you won't find a worse loss on your resume than losing to South Carolina, home, road, neutral, anywhere on planet Earth.
278
right now.
in net.
Yeah, so you're not gonna find a worse situation. Actually, they moved down to 283 now, so that was what I had this morning. So 283 in the net is South Carolina. So yeah, I just look. There's no way we're picking South Carolina here. We're gonna pick Arkansas, and I would want to see the kind of performance you want to see against South Carolina, because that's just, if you're Arkansas, after this is where you kind of make your season. But also in this instance, you can lose your season if you lose a game like this. And so I would think Muss will have his guys ready to go on this one.
Okay, that one is 2:30 tip-off on the SEC Network. Next one, a 3:00 Central tip-off on ESPNU. Alabama visits LSU. Alabama is about a 13-point road favorite with an 89% chance to win, according to the computers. LSU has found a little offense, did so against Texas Tech last Saturday, and then got one into the 70s against Missouri. But scoring going to be a lot tougher to find against the Crimson Tide, which is one of the better defensive and offensive teams in the country.
When's the last time an SEC team won by 50 plus in back-to-back games? I'm just kidding, LSU. I'm just kidding with you. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but boy, if you remember the first
you're
game.
You're not saying it's not.
If you remember the first game, it wasn't pretty. No, I don't expect that here. Of course, Alabama won the first meeting by 40, hit 23s. It's not just that Alabama hit 23s in that game. Do you remember how many threes Alabama shot? They shot 54 3-pointers in that game. Wow. Just ridiculous. Oh, my goodness. Even by Alabama standards, 54 3-point attempts is just absurd. But remember, Alabama
they could get uncontested dunks like they had against Vandy all day.
I mean,
I thought with LSU they'll play harder than that.
They shot 46 against Jacksonville State. They just shot 41 against Vanderbilt. So, I mean, 45 plus here is not out of the question. And in that instance, they're probably hitting at least 15. So, LSU, as we said, against Missouri, did some good things to keep that a game. They made threes. They went 11-33. They got balanced scoring. But the problem is Alabama's a better defensive team than Missouri is. And I just think that I almost wonder if this is the Alabama revenge tour after the Oklahoma game, because we saw it against Vanderbilt. Now this is on the road, so it's tougher. And the computers, you said, are going to make this a much closer game. And I don't think this is going to be 40 points by any means or anything like that. But you're still talking about an LSU team that is just, they've lost 9 in a row now? Is it 9? Yeah, I think it's 9 in a row. So, I mean, it's just one of those things, right? Where I don't really know what the path is unless LSU hits everything. Alabama can't make anything, which, oh, by the way, we saw that same setup against Oklahoma. It's kind of the same situation, but I don't think LSU is as good as Oklahoma. And so I think this is one where you fully would expect Alabama to come out and take care of business. But hey, let's say they don't. Let's say this is a game. Alabama struggles a bit. I don't know. Then maybe you start to wonder, okay, is it a road thing? But I think at this point, there's no reason for me to pick LSU because I just think Alabama's response was as perfect as it gets against Vanderbilt. Coming off that loss, I would think their mindset stays the same here, knowing they're playing a team they just beat by 40, not long ago. They can come out and do the same thing again here if they're making shots. Probably a tougher ask to make that many shots on the road, but I just think they're too good right now. And defensively, I feel like they will slow LSU down to a point that maybe, again, a Missouri team couldn't do necessarily in that game.
Mississippi State gets back to the brutal portion of the schedule because why not? Plays against Missouri in Starkville, 5 o'clock Central on the SEC Network. Missouri has won, 2 road games this year, Wichita State and somebody else. State had just lost its last 2 at home to Tennessee and Florida before beating TCU last Saturday. Boy, this one is really intriguing because it could not get any more opposite in terms of how these teams win.
Yeah, we got some interesting matchups on the Saturday slate because this is one of them. And I think if you're looking at it from the Missouri standpoint, some comparisons. If you try to look at some comparisons here. So they go into Mississippi State, who does what well? They defend really well. They are a good offensive rebounding team. Those are probably the biggest strengths, I think, of Mississippi State. If you look at some of the other games, who's another team like that? Florida's a great defensive team. Missouri struggled there. A&M is a great, well, I don't know if they're to the level of others, but they're a very good defensive team that can also get some offensive rebounds and some second chance opportunities. So this is I think this is a tough matchup for Missouri because, like we said, everything has to even out at some point. 11-66 in their 3 previous games from the 3-point line. Then they go 43 of 87 in the 3 games after that. I think things tend to sort of fall back to the middle. Mississippi State defends it pretty well in pretty much every area on the floor. And so I think Mississippi State will do some things to frustrate Missouri, and I don't expect those open shots. I don't expect them to hit as many threes as they did against, the other 3 teams. But you know what? We could have said that if you looked at Iowa State's defensive numbers and teams like that, right? But this one's on the road. And Starkville, we've said it all season. Mississippi State's record is what it is, but that's not an easy place to play. They beat TCU. I know it was without Mike Miles, but that's still not the easiest place to play. And yet I say all of that to tell you that I'm going to pick Missouri to win this game, because when we've had these matchups before, sometimes we've went against the theory that you pick the offensive team against the defensive team. And I just, what worries me about picking Missouri is that I think Mississippi State could just, on the rebounding front, could just completely take over this game and get a lot of second chance opportunities. That's what would worry me here. But if you're asking me what I think my biggest concern for Missouri would be, it would be the defensive, consistency. Yet against this team, you can probably have a few not great defensive possessions and get away with it. So this is, again, I think this will be one of the better games of the weekend. And I almost think Mississippi State I do think they have to have it. I think you have to have this one to get, in the conversation for the NCAA tournament, because the rest of that schedule, they still got to go to Arkansas, got to go to Missouri. Don't have a lot of opportunities left necessarily, high profile opportunities. So maybe that's what we look back on when we do our reaction video and we say Mississippi State just needed this one much more. And they came out and got it. But at the same time, it's hard for me to ignore the way Missouri's playing right now. And so I'll take the Tigers on the road here in this one. But again, wouldn't be shocked if this winds up similar to a Florida or Texas A&M road game for Missouri, where they just can't buy a bucket and the defensive team wins out here. But I'll take the offensive team from this standpoint.
The computers have Mississippi State as about a 3.5-point favorite. Can't remember if I mentioned that, with right. A 62% chance to win. But I'm with you. I like Missouri. I'm starting to favor teams that I trust to make shots more when in doubt. Okay, also on the SEC Network, 7:30 Central, Georgia goes to Texas A&M. The Aggies are about 11-point favorites at home, according to the computers, with an 85% chance to win. Georgia has not looked good lately against good teams, has lost multiple games by double digits. A&M has played very well for a month and a half. And, Blake, I just can't really make the case for Georgia winning this game based on what we have seen the last few weeks.
No, this is another one I think high on the confidence level in terms of outcome. I don't really see a path for Georgia here. This just feels like just a bad matchup. Now, we did see Vanderbilt again go in there and have a shot. So maybe Georgia finds its way a little bit, but Georgia's they've not been great on the road. We talked about that all season, and I think this is another one where I think now that's 3 straight SEC road games they've lost by at least 14 points. They won the one at Ole Miss, but I don't know how much we put into that. I think this is A&M in a really good spot to bounce back after that Arkansas game, which was just a tough game. I didn't come out of that really concerned about A&M at all, and we've kind of said that in both of their SEC losses at this point. I mean, you came out of the Kentucky game, Arkansas game, just 2 tough matchups at 2 tough venues. But, now you're back at home, College Station. I think, again, rebounding might play a role here. I think A&M could really defend pretty well and kind of slow down Georgia. And, I'm looking for a path here. These are 2 teams that will shoot a lot of free throws, I think. I think Georgia shoots quite a bit more free throws than you would expect. But A&M, as we know, still right there in terms of the leaders nationally in free throw attempts. So, I think A&M is in a really good spot to bounce back. And that's something I do think you trust with Buzz at this point. His teams usually do a pretty good job of bouncing back when they come off a tough loss. And so, I think that's the situation here.
Okay, final game of the night, also at 7:30. This one on ESPN. Kentucky hosts Florida. The Wildcats are about 4-point favorites with a 64% chance to win, according to the computers we're using. Florida, of course, upset Tennessee in Gainesville for its biggest win of the year. And Kentucky, we thought Kentucky was kind of getting right. Lost to Kansas in a kind of a toss-up game in Lexington last week. Kentucky, though, went to Ole Miss and won. That's right, by, 10, 12 points. Florida, I mean, I was going to say this about Florida, but this is really true of both teams. Neither team with a lot to speak of in terms of marquee wins. Again, Florida just got its first. But I don't know. It still feels like betting against Kentucky and Lexington not the play here.
Yeah, but I do think this is
Castleton and Sheboygan is very intriguing.
Yeah, this is a tricky game, I think, for Kentucky because of the way Florida defends. Call it what it is. Florida's a significantly better defensive team than Kentucky right now, and I guess Case and Wallace's status is very important here too because we're going to recording this on Thursday. So as of right now, I mean, we talked about it was precautionary out against Ole Miss, but I mean, that's still something. I mean, Wheeler's, we know, is still kind of banged up too, and so I think that's a pretty significant thing. And if Wallace doesn't play, if you're trying to pick an upset somewhere, I wouldn't be shocked if Florida wins this game. I wouldn't be shocked if they win, even if he does play, just because I think that, as we said, if you really look at it, Florida's played a lot better over the past month now. And, I think as we talked about too, like finding a little more production offensively is crucial for them. Just from a matchup standpoint, I mean, it's clear it's the Castleton Sheboygan matchup is what's going to, kind of stand out here. But what I'm curious to see in this game is because of how Florida defends, can Antonio Reeves get going, the way he can? Can Jacob Toppin continue to be kind of someone offensively that can help them? Who's going to be the player we're talking about outside of Sheboygan and Castleton? That's what I think is most intriguing going into this game and coming out of it, because I think that's a big aspect, because I'm curious to see kind of how that unfolds. I feel like, I'm with you in these kind of games. We usually pick the home team, and I think, it's a very important game for both teams, and that's why I'm really excited, because it is, I mean, one way or the other, like it's kind of a crucial game when you think about it. Both teams need to keep winning to stay in the tournament discussion, although I think a loss for either doesn't hurt you too much. But, it does give you another loss. And like we said, Florida can't really afford a lot of those right now, given where they're at just from a number standpoint. So, yeah, I tell you, I there's a part of me that just wants to pick Florida here, because I just saw what they did against Tennessee. And, yeah, like they're certainly, I think, capable of pulling this off, especially if a Wallace isn't 100%. And again, maybe Wheeler's not either, but I'll pick Kentucky, because I think this is just one they've got to have. And again, usually Kentucky's now lost 2 games at Rupp this season. Boy, it's hard for me to pick a third in the span of a month, for them to lose 3 games at Rupp in the span of a month. And so I'll pick the Cats to get the job done here. But a lot of interesting storylines heading into this one.
Florida's done okay on the road. Now you start to dig in on some of these
one
wins.
At State.
Florida State. Yeah, that's the one that stands out. The other one was winning at LSU. Don't know what that really does for you, but
yeah.
Pardon me. Yeah, I mean, Kansas State was not competitive last week, or Florida was not competitive in the Kansas State game, is what I meant to say. A 2-point loss in College Station before that, a 3-point loss at Auburn. I mean, Florida's been pretty good on the road, other than the Kansas State game, which it really was never in. So just going to point that out.
Yep, that's a fair observation, and I think, again, it's one that I think Kentucky is going to be the favorite here based on the home court advantage. But like all things equal, I just think defensively, Florida is a team that can really frustrate this Kentucky team, and really cause some issues. Again, it is with Castleton on the floor, right? Because just his ability to change how you can play offense in terms of getting to the rim and those kind of things. But Kentucky's a team that still relies on making shots inside the arc, and they don't necessarily get to the free throw line a ton. But that's where again I think a Reeves and Frederick making shots from outside, because you're not going to get a lot of easy shots inside with Castleton around the rim. So yeah, I mean that's going to be a fun thing as always. Kentucky in a big game. How do they adjust offensively? Because I think there are going to be some adjustments here they're going to have to make with Castleton on the other side. And yeah, like this should be a fun one. I'm trying to think back last year. These two played. Kentucky beat Florida by 21 last season in Lexington. And then Kentucky won by 8 on the road. If you look at just kind of performances, Castleton at 18 in that game in Lexington, they lost by 21. He was the only guy in double figures. There's a stat too. Like if Castleton's the only guy in double figures, Florida's in trouble. Sheboy had 27 and 19 in that game last season in Lexington. So that's something else to think about in terms of the matchup. So Sheboy won that matchup, and the other one, and I always hate that I have to go back through these. Like I don't remember. Sheboy went 27 and 14, and the other one, Castleton, went 23 and 10 or 23 and 11. So big time players here. 2 of the top 3 players in the league, perhaps 2 of the top 4. I want to throw Kobe Brown in there. Brandon Miller would be number 1, I think. But yeah, that's always a fun setup. So should get a good one here from those 2 at least.
We'll recap these when they're done, probably Monday morning, although we could do it earlier than that. We'll see. Best way to find out, hit the subscribe button. And if you like this, hit the like button too. Both those things help us out, help us get found. We are doing all kinds of stuff with baseball and football still too. We've got you covered in the big 3 men's sports at Southeastern 14. Also putting up some content on the website at southeastern14.com. Again, thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe and like buttons, and we'll see you again soon.